Hello again, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at the slides for cartilage and blood. These are going to be the slides that are on Lab Exam 2. Now there's also the bone tissue slide, the osteon slide, which is actually covered in a previous video when I was doing bone structure. So if you haven't seen that, be sure to watch that video because it does contain a slide that could be on Lab Exam 2. So let's go ahead and dive in. This first slide is one that you've seen before back when we were first learning how to use the microscope. This is the blood smear, and what we're seeing here is what blood looks like under a microscope. And you'll know from lecture and just from things that you've heard before, the function of blood is to transport various things around the body, such as oxygen and carbon dioxide, and also nutrients and waste produced by the body tissues. So a couple things that we can see in this slide. First, the most abundant thing we see are these things that look kind of like little pink donuts or Cheerios. These are the red blood cells. Actually, we're going to call them now erythrocytes. Erythrocyte is the proper name for a red blood cell. Erythro is a root word that means red, and erythrocytes transport oxygen around our body. The other things that we will see are these cells that have these purple blobs in them, and they will all look pretty different from each other, but these are our white blood cells, and their proper name is leukocyte. Leukocytes are white blood cells, and these cells, you'll learn next semester in Bio 139, actually have several different functions because there are several different types of leukocytes, but for right now you don't need to know the types. But the thing that they all have in common is they are part of our immune system, so these help keep us healthy. And the final thing is all of this clear background area that's not one of those two cells. This is the extracellular matrix of blood. Remember, most connective tissues have a very extensive extracellular matrix. Blood is a connective tissue, so it also has a very extensive extracellular matrix. It's just in blood, we give it a more specific name. We call it plasma. So this clear background area here, this is blood plasma. All right, and now on this image, we actually see all three of the cartilages that you're responsible for knowing on this lab exam. And the reason that I have them all together is because the first thing that I want to do is point out how you can distinguish between the different cartilage types. Now, the thing that they all have in common is they all contain cartilage cells, and cartilage cells have the name chondrocytes. Chondra just means cartilage. Chondrocytes are cartilage cells. And just like we saw in bone, chondrocytes sit within a depression called a lacuna. So this is a chondrocyte in lacuna. Here is another chondrocyte in lacuna. Now, the way that we can tell the difference is we're going to look to see what do the fibers look like. And there's a lot of collagen fiber in cartilage. Over here on the left, this is hyaline cartilage. Here in the middle, this is fibrocartilage. And over on the right is elastic cartilage. So how do we tell the difference in those three? The fibers in hyaline cartilage are not easily visible. They're there, we just don't really see them, and under a microscope, hyaline cartilage, I've always thought, kind of looks a little bit like stained glass. Now again, just like we saw back with our first lab or the first of the tissue labs, I believe it was lab 3. Don't learn colors, because colors can change from slide to slide. So even though it's pink in this image, it's often stained blue. I've seen it stained green. So don't learn colors. Learn to see what do the fibers do. And in hyaline cartilage, we don't see the fibers, and the cartilage looks kind of like stained glass. In fibrocartilage, the fibers all tend to run roughly parallel. Here we can see bundles of fibers all running parallel. And in elastic cartilage, we can see that the fibers run all different directions. So hyaline cartilage, you don't see the fibers. And then if you do see the fibers, if they run parallel to each other, it's fibro. If they run all directions, it's elastic. And as far as functions go, hyaline cartilage, its function is to give structural support, such as we find in the costal cartilage of the ribs. It also covers the ends of long bones at joints. For fibrocartilage, its function is it can resist compressive forces. So we find it in places like the discs in between your vertebrae, the intervertebral discs, where the two halves of the pelvis meet at the pubic symphysis, and also in those meniscus that we find in the knees. And over here on the right, elastic cartilage, its function is to provide a great deal of flexibility, and we don't find it very many places in the body. It's found in the throat in a little flap called the epiglottis. The epiglottis bends when we swallow to cover up our trachea so that food or liquid does not go down into our lungs. And then also in the stiff portion of the external ear, so the upper part of your ear where it's a little bit stiffer, not the lower part, the lobe, but the upper part of your ear that you can bend and it's very stiff and it snaps back. So that's where we find elastic cartilage. All right, this was a pretty short video. Make sure to watch this and the other videos prior to lab exam 2, which we should be having here very shortly.